Have you ever witnessed a miracle unfold before your eyes? A moment when the impossible becomes possible and hope shines through the darkest of storms? This is the tale of an extraordinary rescue that will warm your heart and restore your faith in the power of compassion. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the distant creak of falling branches. Though the winds no longer howled, their fury lingered in the scars carved into the small riverside town. Streets were littered with broken shingles and twisted metal. Splintered trees lay across fences, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. By the riverbank, the water still raged, swollen far beyond its usual bounds. Its surface boiled with foam and debris, fragments of rooftops, splintered boards, plastic containers, and the remnants of someone's garden shed. Nature had shown her power, and now she dragged her wreckage downstream in an endless procession. Amid this destruction, a sound broke through the chaos. It was faint, carried by the wind and the roar of the river. A fragile cry, not the wail of a human infant, nor the song of a bird. It was thinner, weaker, and infinitely more desperate. The cry of a kitten. Out in the middle of the river, clinging to a jagged plank of wood, was a tiny, grand white kitten. Its fur was plastered flat against its skin, dripping water into the churning current. The animal trembled uncontrollably, wide eyes filled with terror. Each small mew was almost swallowed by the roar of the river, vanishing into the storm's echo. On the muddy bank stood a young puppy, no more than 3 months old. His name, though no one present knew it, was Leo. He was golden, though now his fur was darkened and matted from the rain. Thin, cold, and shivering, he barked frantically at the sight of the kitten. His small voice carried high above the noise, but it could not bridge the distance. The river was too wide, the current far too strong. Leo paced back and forth, paws sinking into the wet mud, tail low. His eyes never left the drifting plank. He barked again, louder, then whimpered in frustration. Every instinct in his tiny body screamed to help, but what could a puppy do against the fury of the river? Then movement stirred in the reeds. Out from the grass, with slow and deliberate steps, came an old river turtle. Its shell was dark and scarred, its limbs thick and heavy. The turtle's name, given long ago by local children who sometimes saw him sunning on the rocks, was Kale. He had survived storms before, and each mark on his shell was a memory of endurance. Leo stopped pacing. He turned, ears twitching, eyes wide with sudden hope. As Kale moved closer to the river, the puppy dashed toward him. His paws splashed in puddles as he skidded to a halt in front of the turtle. For a moment, the two creatures regarded each other, the trembling youth and the ancient survivor. Then Leo did something no one watching would ever forget. He rose onto his hind legs, wobbling from weakness but determined. His trembling front paws pressed together against his chest, as if in prayer. His dark eyes, full of desperation and pleading, locked on Kale. A soft whimper left his throat, followed by a single sharp bark. Not of command, but of request. He seemed to beg. The turtle paused. It tilted its wrinkled head, as though listening. Then, without hesitation, Kale slid forward into the torrent. Leo dropped back onto all fours and ran along the bank, barking again and again, as if guiding. His high-pitched cries echoed over the water, drawing the turtle toward the drifting plank. The current was merciless. It tugged at Kale, swirling in dangerous eddies, but his strokes were slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Step by step, he pressed forward. Foam slapped against his shell. Debris bumped his sides, yet he did not falter. At last, Kale reached the kitten. The little one's claws slipped against the soaked wood, its tiny body sagging in exhaustion. With a pitiful cry, it lost its grip. For one terrifying second, the kitten tumbled, half submerged in the roaring flood. But Kale was there. His broad shell cut through the current, pressing beneath the drowning animal. The kitten scrambled desperately, and then collapsed onto him, clinging weakly. Its mews were faint, but its body rose above the water. On the bank, Leo went wild. He barked madly, tail wagging furiously, bounding from one spot to another in frantic joy. He ran ahead, then back, then forward again, never letting Kale lose sight of where to go. Twice the turtle was caught in swirling waters, spun nearly sideways. Twice he steadied himself. always finding the shore guided by the little dog's voice. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Kel's heavy form pushed against the mud at the water's edge. With a last effort, he heaved himself up from the current, and the kitten slid onto solid ground. It coughed weakly, water trickling from its mouth, but it was alive. At that very moment, several townspeople arrived. They had been searching the area, called out by the frantic barking that carried above the storm's aftermath. When they reached the riverbank, the scene before them froze them in stunned silence. A drenched grand white kitten lay trembling beside a golden puppy. Behind them, the ancient turtle rested at the water's edge, sides heaving from the effort. A woman named Alina dropped to her knees, gently wrapping the kitten in her jacket. She pressed it to her chest, whispering soft reassurances. Another man, Mateo, lifted Leo into his arms. The puppy squirmed, still wriggling toward Kale, as if desperate to thank his rescuer. The people exchanged astonished glances. One voice broke the silence, that little dog. He begged the turtle to help. Leo licked the kitten's soaked fur, whining softly. The kitten mewed in return, pressing its nose into his neck. Kale, silent and ancient, turned slowly back toward the water. His work was done. He slid once more into the river, disappearing into its murky depths with the dignity of a guardian. For a long moment, the people simply stood in quiet respect, watching the ripples fade. In the days that followed, the story spread through the neighborhood and then through the entire town. They called it the Riverbank Miracle. They told of Leo, the golden puppy who was so desperate he pressed his paws together like a child in prayer. They spoke of Kale, the scarred turtle who braved the flood to carry life upon his back. Neighbors whispered it over fences, children reenacted it in play, and elders nodded solemnly when they heard. In a time of destruction, when roofs were broken and lives shaken, the tale gave hope. It was proof that courage and compassion, no matter how small, no matter how unexpected, could shine brighter than the darkest storm.
Oh.
And so, long after the debris was cleared and the streets rebuilt, the Riverbank Miracle lived on. It lived in the memory of those who stood on the muddy shore, in the grateful purr of the kitten who had nearly drowned, and in the wagging tail of the puppy who had dared to pray. Because sometimes, in the quiet after the storm, the truest stories are not of destruction, but of the strange and wondrous ways life chooses to protect itself.